Hi, Aoife. Thanks for joining us for this short interview this morning. Um, Basically, what I'd like to do is talk to you around some advice you would give to graduates on starting their career in finance and discuss some areas like tips that you'd give for interviewing, also things relating to, say, CV design, um, and also a little bit of information around your own experience of working in finance, working in industry as well, in financial services, and any suggestions or tips that you might have for people who are graduating and are looking for a career in financial services. I guess a good place to start would be just to ask you to give a short introduction to yourself. Tell the students just briefly about your background, your experience, and what you're doing at the moment with Pfizer. I think that would be a great place to start.
Okay, thanks, Patrick, and thanks very much for the opportunity to speak this morning as well. I appreciate it. So my name is Aoife Allen. I'm a director in Pfizer's Global Business Services group here in Dublin. So we're a large pharmaceutical company, one of the largest in the world, but and probably better known in Ireland for manufacturing. But actually, we have about 500 finance professionals, normally based in the Watermark building in Ringsend, now working remotely very successfully all since March. And we do a number of different types of finance activities from Dublin for Pfizer globally. For myself, maybe a little bit about myself. I'm an accountant by training. I trained with PricewaterhouseCoopers here in Dublin, worked in a number of different finance roles in Ireland and actually abroad in Australia for a number of years. But I've been working with Pfizer for the last 14 years, all based out of Dublin. But over that time, I've probably had the opportunity to do 9 different roles across different areas of finance, from general ledger through to order to cash or accounts receivable, risk management and compliance. And right now, I lead our global statutory reporting COE. We are an organization. My organization is about 100 people. We have 3 offices, the main office in Dublin, where the COE or Centre of Excellence is managed from. We would have about 80 people in Dublin. We have a team based in Dalian in China that report into the Dublin office but are responsible for statutory reporting for the Asia Pac region for Pfizer. And then we have a team based in Costa Rica, in San Jose in Costa Rica, who are responsible for the LATAM and Central American statutory reporting for Pfizer. Brief introduction. That's really, I suppose, a brief introduction to myself. What I am also responsible for, from a Dublin perspective, is our graduate program. So we run a graduate program for finance in conjunction with Chartered Accountants Ireland, where we train chartered accountants in the very same way, with the same structures that are available through a training contract with the Big Four. And I'm the recognised training partner for Pfizer, and manage our graduate programme. We chose Chartered Accountants Ireland as our training partner, and we seek to train chartered accountants, because actually we are the 5th largest employer of chartered accountants in Ireland. The only groups or organisations in Ireland that employ more qualified chartered accountants than we do are the Big Four. So, and as we talk maybe later a little bit about the future of finance, we can delve into that a little bit, how it's possible to have a global organization and a pharmaceutical company, I suppose, being such a large employer of not just chartered accountants, but accountants and other finance professionals from a global business services office in Dublin. So it's a bit of
Yeah.
a backdrop for me. I don't know if there's other information you want me to give on the graduate program particularly, or on the site.
Yeah.
Happy
So
to answer any questions.
yeah, let's talk a little bit about the graduate program. Maybe when it, like when it started, to um, what you look for in graduates. Just the main things that you think are most relevant for the grad program, that you think students who are starting their masters now and are starting to think about making applications, because the deadlines come very quickly with, say, the Big Four. What do you think they need to know now in order to get ready to apply to the Pfizer grad
Yeah.
program?
So the graduate program started, our graduate program started about 5 years ago, I would say, is when we started thinking about the fact we should have a graduate program. We're a very large finance organization, about 500 people, and we felt it was appropriate that we would look at a graduate program. We had tried a program maybe a number of years previously, maybe a more typical finance program, 2 years in duration, maybe 6 months rotations, etc. But it didn't quite work for us. So what we wanted was something that was maybe of longer duration, where we really felt that we could help one, diversify our colleague base. So to bring in different types of colleagues, we're with all organizations, we've a lot of accountants, a lot would train maybe with Big Four, excellent training. But then, a lot of people tend to think perhaps the same way. We also are an international group. We support markets globally. So the idea that we would, try and diversify our colleague base is very important to us, not just from a graduate perspective, but also in terms of the nationalities and the skill sets of our colleagues. But one way we were looking at was around our graduate program. And when we looked at different options, it was clear that what we can offer is a very good training in accounting. We have groups, we have the largest indirect tax or VAT group of any of the Big Four working in GFIS in Dublin. We have operational transfer pricing. So while it might seem quite a technical group, but a tax related group, a very large group that globally manage that particular function for Pfizer from Dublin. We have my statutory reporting COE group. We have corporate reporting, so more your US GAAP focused, treasury operations, and other order to cash, other types of finance activities. And we saw that we could really offer a good, strong opportunity to train as an accountant. We chose Chartered Accountants Ireland because what it allows us to do is fix the length of our graduate program with the training contract, so a 3 or 3.5 year training contract. We can offer a rotation among different departments, and at the same time, people our graduates are pursuing their academic qualification. So really helps us, because what it means is we can build teams that have a graduate on them, a number of qualified accountants, people managers, maybe specialists. Really helps diversify our group and gives us access to the best graduates through our partnership with Trinity College or with other universities. Really gives us access to excellent students from all backgrounds and nationalities, which is very important to us. And it also for us helps to grow our reputation within our global organization. Chartered accountancy is seen as a very strong qualification in our New York headquarters. Chartered Accountants Ireland has a mutual recognition agreement with CPA, with the Certified Public Accounting Board in the US. So it is a very recognized qualification. So all in all, for us, it gives us access to a great pool of candidates, helps with our reputation from an Ireland Inc. perspective in terms of our engagement with the universities, and helps grow our global reputation within our own global organization because of that link with chartered accountants, and provides us, gives us an opportunity to train and see young graduates coming through, gaining their qualification, but also gives us an opportunity then to assist and develop a really rounded finance professional with experience in global business services, so kind of centralized finance, experience in the pharmaceutical industry, and then at the end of it, allows us to look to see if there's opportunities within our global organization that people can go on to. So that was some of the reason behind the graduate, why we wanted to go down a graduate program route. As I said, we started about 5 years ago. We, as of this week, will be taking on our new 2020 graduates, and the program size will be about 18. Now, small compared to some of the very large, if you think of some of the big four, but that allows us to really get the best graduates. It's a small program, but is large for us. 18 people into an organization our size is, and it's been very successful. We're growing year on year. We're taking more graduates each year because it has been so successful, and we look to continue that.
Very good. Yeah. And I know, like, say with the big four, there's deadlines and things along like that. But just so the students know, when would you like them to apply for this grad program?
So what we will do, our graduate program, and indeed any role, any permanent role with Pfizer, needs to go through a global process. So we have it's advertised on Pfizer.com under our careers section. We will probably open it, I would say, in the second week, maybe the last 2 weeks of September. We will open for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. It's a CV application. I know some of the other organizations use a different methodology. What we do is a normal CV application. Every single individual, every CV that is provided to us is reviewed and considered. And we will shortlist down then to the number of candidates we would wish to do a video interview with. So we ask just 3 simple questions. The successful candidates can do that. They're given a period of, I think, maybe 3 or 4 days, answer those questions from the comfort of their own home, and we review those video interviews to again whittle down to a first interview. It would have been in person. We will obviously do them remotely this year, and it would be a series of 2 interviews. So the first time, I suppose, the first opportunity we get, or the first introduction we get to any candidate, is their CV, and that is applied online. So we'll probably, as I said, give a 3-4 week period, maybe over the end of September into early October, and we'd look to do interviews then. Because we are a small niche program, and also because things change over the course of the year, it may be that we would seek to, we'll see what candidates we get, who's been successful. After Christmas, we also review again to see, do we think that we would like more? And if that's the case, we sometimes will open later in the year. We've always attended any of the university career fairs. We'd always make sure that the opportunity that the role is open to apply after those. But again, we'll see how that goes this year. 2020 into 2021 is going to be an unusual one for all of us, with much been done remotely. But as I said, the first introduction that we have is through CV.
Okay, so that actually brings us on to a nice point, because I remember you told me recently that you, in one afternoon, you had to look at 180 CVs.
I did indeed, yeah. So as I said, every CV, every applicant is reviewed. We have to do that. There is a broad, I suppose, our talent acquisition group, which is in effect, I suppose, our internal recruitment group. It's an internal Pfizer recruitment group. They do a first kind of sweep to make sure that the CVs are broadly aligned with what we would expect, but that is a very high level review. So, we had, I think, maybe 500 applications for about 4 roles. Every CV is reviewed. In one interview, in one afternoon, I had 180 CVs that I had to review, one after the other. Which is a mammoth task, and also a task at the time where you feel a responsibility to be fair to everybody, and you want to give the same attention and the same consideration of all of those CVs. So to that point, to me, simplicity and clarity is very important on a CV, and brevity, if I can say that. Nothing more than 2 pages. It just can take, when you're reviewing that amount of CVs, a 5-page CV is not something that I want to see. What I look for particularly, and probably because of the nature of our graduate program, is education. So clear that somebody's educational journey is appropriate, but that's not to say that we are looking for very particular degree courses. We have one of our successful graduates, actually, I think their primary degree was in environmental science. But we want to see good, strong education. I'm interested in work experience or other experience, not necessarily work experience, but any type of experience a graduate can demonstrate that shows their leadership skills or sort of a broader skill beyond their education. It doesn't have to be work experience, although I will look at that very keenly. But any sort of roles that they had or engagement they had with sports groups or charities or anything at all. I'm interested in all of that. Any sort of achievements or qualifications beyond the educational, any sort of even sporting, etc., are also of interest. I think, and I know that we had discussed previously, can a graduate kind of craft or direct their CV depending on a role, and I think that can be quite difficult, maybe particularly at this level. But I do think where maybe a graduate can stand out is, what I am looking for is somebody who is interested in training as a chartered accountant in industry. That's what's very specific about our graduate program. And if that can be addressed maybe in one sentence at the top, that would be great. So irrespective of the role that you're applying for, maybe try to see what's different about it or particular, or what really is been looked for. Oftentimes people, and rightly so, and it's appreciated, they put a lot of emphasis on the fact that we're a pharmaceutical company. We'll have investigated that a lot, and that's fantastic. But really, we are also an in-house accounting firm. And that is equally as important to us and to our success as the fact that we're pharmaceuticals. So that, it's about trying to really look at the job description, try and interpret what it is you think that is different about that job, or what's really been looked at, and maybe address that in a sentence briefly at the top of a CV. But really, the shorter the CV, to me, the better, because when you're looking at 180 in one afternoon, actually that is what stands out, as opposed to a very long CV with a lot of detail. So short CV with the relevant information, and clear. And it doesn't need to look like a traditional CV. We see some where people have taken a different slant or a different approach, and that's fine too. That also, helps. But keeping it clear, keeping it short, and being very confident in your CV about your achievements is what would help it stand out for me.
Yeah, no, that's kind of like a consistent theme that I've picked up over the last number of years as well. Be clear, keep it concise, and make sure it's relevant. Yeah, so
absolutely, yeah.
good suggestions.
The same for an interview, I would say. I've had plenty of interviews that have been quite short. And the reason they're short is because the questions that you ask are answered, they're answered clearly, and that's fine. There isn't a need to elaborate hugely. So again, really important to listen to the questions in an interview and answer the question that's been asked. And don't be afraid to, if the question isn't clear, don't be afraid to say, I'm sorry, can you repeat it or rephrase it, or I'm not sure what you're referring to. That's absolutely fine as well.
Yeah, and you were telling me about a graduate that you were hired last year, I think it was, that you felt really made an impact. Could you tell us a little bit about that again, about what made her stand out? Because I think when you got an example, it can really demonstrate or illustrate the point.
Yeah, so we actually had a number of candidates that we interviewed. We have one from Trinity who will be joining us, and I think what was really clear and exciting when I spoke to this particular candidate was that she had really considered, she wanted to train as a chartered accountant, okay, and understood that that was the qualification she wanted to pursue. There's many different accounting qualifications, all of them, extremely valuable and equal. We don't, when I'm looking at a qualified accountant role, I'm not looking to see as a chartered or CIMA, I'm looking to see the work experience and the qualification. So I want to be clear on that, but we offer a chartered accounting program. So she was very clear she wanted to do that. She was very excited about the opportunity to pursue it through industry. She'd done her homework. She knew what it meant to pursue a sort of maybe a big four route, to train through audit or to train through tax, etc., had done that homework and knew it wasn't for her and was very able to articulate that. And for me, that's the perfect candidate, because somebody has educated themselves, they know what they want, they're confident in that without being overconfident, and are very able to articulate. And that was really what was extremely refreshing. Now, I trained through an excellent training and an excellent background through PricewaterhouseCoopers. I trained through audit, fantastic, but and a really good route to go. What we offer that's different though, and not many companies do it, and certainly we're the largest in industry, is the ability to do the exact same training program but through industry. And what stood out with this particular candidate was that was what she really wanted to do and was able to articulate it. And very briefly, but I was sold.
Okay, that's some really good advice and good insights into what a successful interview can look like. How you can come
Absolutely.
across
Yeah.
and make a good impression. And so we talked about the CV, we talked about interviewing, we talked about the grad program, and I suppose also be interesting to get any advice that you would give to a graduate based on what you've learned now to date. What suggestions, tips would you give to someone who's just finishing their master's?
I think, first of all, I think this year particularly must be an extremely difficult year for anybody to be coming out of their educational cycle and trying to get a role, because everything is so unusual for all of us. I say that in some ways. I also say though that I think that some of the colleagues who have adapted best to these new circumstances are our younger colleagues, our graduates, who are maybe much more familiar than I with the whole virtual and digital world. Um, we have, and it's not the same in all industries, but we have about 500 people who have been working remotely since March, and that is going to continue till the end of the year. We have reopened the office, and it's by invitation if people want to travel in, but we're a city centre location. A lot of people use public transport. Obviously, that's not been encouraged. So what I would say is to expect things to be a little bit different. To expect, particularly, I would say if graduates are going into a finance type role, that there will be a remote, I suppose, element to the role, if not all of it. But in some ways, as I said, I think this is the generation, I'm showing my age, that maybe are much find it much easier to adapt to that. I think as well, for somebody who is coming out of a master's program, to really try and know what it is they want to do. I think I made the reference earlier. What to me, a candidate who is very confident in their abilities, in what they want to do, confident in their CV is very attractive. There's a line between confidence and overconfidence, but that really, somebody who knows what they want to do and can articulate that is really good. I would also say, though, that I think that the opportunities for graduates now, finance as a whole is changing without doubt. The structures, a lot driven by technology. And I think we are finding, a lot of people would say that the changes that have been made as a result of the COVID pandemic, with people working remotely and doing things much more remotely, and automation, they were coming anyway, and maybe this is just has kind of escalated the journey. Definitely for us, what we talk about is automation, further digitization, all of that is coming to finance. And I think, graduates now are best placed, because that's a world that they have been, embracing for a long time. When I was a teenager, there was no internet or, iPads, all of that. Younger people now are much better placed to be able to deal with that level of change, I think, than maybe somebody of older generations. And it's not something to be afraid of. And in some ways, the skills that graduates can bring to organizations of that type are invaluable. And I think that where our current circumstances may make it much harder for graduates coming out is, I can only imagine how difficult it is to try and integrate into a team from the end of a video. And that's really what's needed now. I've been working 14 years in Pfizer. I know everybody. I know who I need to pick up the phone to, or the headset, or who to contact. That is much more challenging, I imagine, from from your just sitting in your own workspace, be it your bedroom or your kitchen table. So I think what I would say is graduates now who are coming out will need to be much more deliberate in how they become part of teams. Not afraid to say, who do I talk to? I'll put in time to speak with this person. I need to understand what the organization structure is, so that I know who I need to talk to, and to be very deliberate in that way. You're not sitting in an office where somebody will come over and say, oh, hi, my name is such and such, or you'll see somebody. There is going to be a need to be much more deliberate about integrating into groups and teams, and organizations are struggling with that as well. As I said, our graduates are starting now in 3 days' time, and we really are. How do we make sure they feel part of a team? We do have an office, it does exist. We have a great culture. How do we continue that in a more digital world? And so I would definitely say that for graduates, they need to be quite deliberate about how they're going to, and think about how they're going to what strategies they'd have to address that when they get into their new organizations.
Actually, a really good point. Something I hadn't thought about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, is I've seen so many benefits to working online, and the way technology can facilitate so much. But if you are actually joining a large organization, it's going to be harder to map it and to get to know people. There's no water cooler talk. There's no
water cooler. No, absolutely. And so really need to think about how they're going to do that, and what they can bring and what they can offer to an organization to help them to do that. Because I'm fully sure somebody that is doing a master's in Trinity is much more au fait than I am with kind of how we can be social in this new world virtually than I would be. I'm very used to just going into the office every day and going and talking to who it is that I need to speak to. And actually for me, just on a personal, what I have found, this one of the upsides of this working from home is I have a global team. So actually it's easier for us to integrate globally than it would have been previously. So we have a manager, I would be meeting with my managers in Dublin. We'd all be sitting around a table asking our manager in Costa Rica to dial in, and she's trying to hear what everyone is saying. It's much more difficult on her. Now we could all be in, we are all in the same place. We're all sitting, at home in front of our laptops. And from that perspective, it has made our global teams really feel much more part of the team, which has been very positive. And we now need to find a balance in how we're going to continue that, but also, how we don't lose sort of the to your point, the water cooler moments.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah. And when we met last year, you shared some very interesting information around what you noticed about the early kind of impact of AI and how
Yeah.
AI is impacting on finance. And I was curious just to check in with you again around what you think that's kind of how that's going to shape finance. I mean, I know this is hard to there's a bit of guesswork involved here, but
There is,
just how
yeah.
what trends you're starting to notice and how that might impact finance and graduates and yourself, of course, as well in the coming kind of months and maybe a couple of years.
Well, what I would say very simply, right, it has completely changed finance and will continue to do so. So all of the activities that I did as a trainee accountant to learn my trade, and to build the building blocks of knowledge that help you to, as I said, learn your trade, learn your role. A lot of those are gone because they're now done by robots or they've been automated by big ERP systems. And a lot of that activity is, there's been a huge amount of automation. We would say that we aim to automate 75% of our manual processes across everything across Pfizer. Now, the one organization that's very close to that is finance, because we've been doing it for years through, our ERP systems, our SAP systems, our accounting systems, and now through robotic process automation. That will continue, right? But saying that, you cannot replace the kind of the technical expertise, the intuitive knowledge, that an accountant or another finance professional brings. And for me, then it's about how we train somebody when some of those very repetitive, more mundane tasks, but the ones that were the building blocks, we've had to rethink how we train and educate our accountants. And that's what, I know Chartered Accountants Ireland and the other accounting bodies are doing that at the moment. The other big change to me that has been happening for a long time in finance, and we're going to see it not just in finance, but more broadly, and we're seeing it within our own organization, is around this idea of global business services, or essentially the centralization of functions. Again, finance has been on this journey for a long time. So as I said, we have 500 people in Dublin who are essentially doing centralized finance functions or treasury functions or others for a global organization in finance in Pfizer. And by centralizing those in one place, you can standardize, you can optimize, you can really ensure that the controls that are applied to those are consistent and robust. And you can also employ technologies. It becomes more economically viable to bring in a financial statement generation tool when you're doing 220 sets of financial statements like my group do, than if you're sitting in if I was sitting in Ireland just doing the Irish statements, which are 5 or 6. So this whole concept of centralization is one, or global business services now, as it's commonly known, is really where finance is going and where other groups are going. And we recently had an announcement within our own organization, so that the gentleman, Bill Carpesi, who heads up global business services now, has been, we did report into finance, into the CFO. He is now on the executive leadership team and reports directly to Albert Bourla, who's the CEO of Pfizer. So it shows the importance of this concept of GBS, of kind of centralizing what we call enabling functions, those functions that enable the business, and driving efficiencies that way. And that is not just in finance, that will go across, HR, legal, all enabling functions, and is a reality. Most accountants that are training now will end up working in some sort of centralized group, because all of the large companies are doing this kind of GBS functions to, as I said, drive efficiencies, allow you to take advantage of new technologies and that type of thing.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. It's actually across HR, finance. It's impacting every area.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It's across all functions, or it will be. I think finance has been the one sort of function in large global organizations that has been ahead of the curve. But we're certainly seeing now non-financial activities being organized in a very similar way. In our own organization, procurement, for example, is one where they're bringing a centralized approach to it. It will be managed as a central group and as a global group, and then allows, as I said, allows standardization of processes and efficiencies, etc.
Okay, that is actually all the questions that I had kind of to ask this morning. So that's it for me. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So is there anything else you want to share that we haven't covered, or?
No, I don't think so. I think maybe just for any of your graduates, any of your students who are looking at this, I wish them the very best of luck finishing out on their studies, and also as they start to move into a new phase and look for roles beyond their master's degrees or whatever. I wish them the best of luck, and I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. It was great to speak this morning, and it's always great to engage with Trinity and to engage with your students. We really enjoy it.
Yeah, that's great, and also look forward to seeing you at the careers fairs that will be running during the year, and then also maybe an individual presentation at some stage, or we can organize those events in the coming weeks and months. Yeah. So we look forward to that.
Brilliant. I'm delighted. We'd love to do it. Yeah.
Okay,
thanks
great.
Very much.
Well, thanks again for your time, and I hope you have a good day and a good week.
Yeah.
We'll catch up soon.
No problem. Thanks.
Thanks, Aoife.
Bye-bye.
Bye.